with the Feerick name, but you've came to a fantastic town, the most beautiful town I think in Ireland, if I can say so myself, and also voted the best place in Ireland to live last year by the Irish Times readership. So it's a fantastic town. I'd like to extend a big céad míle fáilte to all the members of the Feerick family that have travelled far and wide from across the globe and have made that special effort. And that's what really this is all about. It's that special effort to book a flight, organise your families, get over here from Australia, Virginia, California, and all those from all over Ireland, and even those, our neighbours in South Mayo and Ballinrobe and Clonbur and all around that area. For our international visitors that may not be as familiar as Westport as some of the rest of us, Westport has a huge amount to offer in relation to activities. It's also one of the only planned towns in Ireland, so you'll see that in the architecture along the Mall there. It's based on a French boulevard, so there's a few influences. We're also 5 times national. Up in St. Patrick's Hall, which is where we basically entertain the Queen and places and people like that, and gave a terrific, enthusiastic encouragement to everyone there to get involved in the gathering. And I tell you, the energy that he had that day, if he had that tomorrow, he'd be talking out for Mayo on Sunday. But without further ado, it's very great to have Michael here with us, and Michael, thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, and I want to say a céad míle fáilte to you all. First of all, you're welcome to my town. I'm born and reared in Westport, and I'm not saying it. The Irish Times said it's the best town in Ireland to live in, and you're all very welcome here tonight. I want to say, first of all, to all the Feericks, and thank you for inviting me. From France and Germany, and from the rest of the world, we have a 6% increase, so the gathering has worked. And I want to say to you tonight, to the Feericks from all over the world, first of all, I want to say on behalf of the Irish government, thank you for what you have done. Thank you for what you have done for this country. And I know particularly I talk about our diaspora, who sometimes we forget about, and did forget about in the last 10 years. I'm somebody that has went all over Britain and all over America promoting Ireland. And my father, like many of ye, had to go to England. We had a family of 13. There was nothing easy in this town. Now, you might say with a family of 13, he didn't stay way too long, but every time he came home, we won't talk about that tonight. But I have to say, not easy, didn't find it easy, but our diaspora all over the world supported this country in the good days, in the bad. People talk about the EU now. Well, there was no EU in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s, and the 60s, and coming to my town, but coming to the country. We do appreciate it, and I hope that you have an enjoyable stay in the town. And you'll always remember this night, not because of me, not because of your gathering, because on next Sunday, it'll be the first time. And 2 years ago, when I was made Minister for Sport, and in the Kenny was Taoiseach, I made a prediction. Before the election I said, Kenny will be Taoiseach, Ring will be Minister, and when we will be in government, we will bring back the Sam Maguire Cup, and we're going to bring that back on Sunday. Frank Dolan is here tonight. Frank is a member of the Tiny Towns. He's also our local photographer. And Frank, I want you to make sure that you record this tonight. You take the photographs. You make sure you have this on the website, because this will be a historical night. And this family will have played their part for Mayo, Connacht, Ireland, and we thank you for that. Again, for inviting me here tonight. I have a wedding I'm at. When I was asked to do this, I wasn't going to let you down.
And then Maureen, Sergeant from Brisbane, is going to give us a talk on the Feericks in Australia, and that is a fascinating presentation. And then around 12 o'clock we're going to have a question and answer session, and hopefully lots of hard questions for Aidan and everyone but me. And then we're going to go to on the bus, or take your car, or however you want to get to Banrobe, and we're going to have some lunch. And so we're going to have lunch in McGrail's pub. If we had met 150 years ago, that would have been our language. So I'd like to welcome you all and thank you for coming up, getting up so early on a Saturday morning to be here with us. Now, Mike, you may need to help me here. Oh, that one, yes. Okay, I'm going to take the rather scenic route. So the first part will be a kind of introduction. Just to explain the map I have there, people began to inhabit this island of Ireland that we call Ireland today about 8000 BC. We've no idea where the first settlers came from or how many of them there were. We reckon that between the arrival of the first settlers and the arrival of the first farmers, that is a period of about 4,000 years, there were more or less 3,000 people on the island of Ireland. And they may not have been there all the time. What kind of a place would it have been? Well, first of all, it would have been an emerald isle. Lush, green, primeval forests would have covered the whole of the island, and the first settlers must have lived by hunting and fishing along the shores of our rivers and lakes and beside the ocean. The Irish Church at the time was monastic in organisation, and the abbots came from the ruling families of the different territories. The diocesan structure of the Roman Catholic Church was imposed in the 12th century. And from our study of surnames, we know that celibacy was not a priority among the clergy. Names like Mac Taggart is Mock on Soggart, the son of the priest, and of course names like Macanaspy or Mock on Aspy, son of the bishops. The situation of the Irish Church, which differed quite a bit from the Roman Church. As well as bringing with it a new belief system, Christianity brought lands over seas of corn and lustrous gardens left and right. Even in the clime of resplendent Spain, beams no such sun upon such a land. But it was the time, it was in the reign of Cotton Moore of the wine-red hand. And the poem goes on. Now, that's Ireland as it was, imagined by the poet, at a time of peace and prosperity, and then at an organisation of society which we call in shorthand feudalism. Now, they began in the east of the country, the south and east of the country, and over the next century or so spread towards the south and west of the country. Only parts of Ulster, where you can see the Ineal, the O'Neills, and the parts of the western seaboard remained outside their control. But in the year 1235, a concerted effort was made to subdue Connaught, led by the de Burghs, that's Richard de Burgh, Hugh de Lacy, and the Fitzgeralds of Kildare, I hasten to add, who were aided and abetted by their vassals, the Birminghams. Gradually, these powerful Norman families replaced the great Gaelic lords, the O'Connors and the O'Kellys, the O'Flahertys and the O'Malleys. Now, shortly before the arrival of the Normans, about the year 1000, the need was felt for hereditary surnames. Before that time, when the population of the whole country was under 1 million, people didn't travel much outside their own territory. They used simple forms like Mac, son of, and O, grandson of, plus the father's or grandfather's names, forenames. The female form was Ni, or Nick. This is still common practice among the Irish-speaking communities in Ireland today, as you know. And to give the name of the ancestor, like Tom Ned or Jim Davy. Because kinship was and indeed is such an important feature of Gaelic society, the majority of Irish surnames are either patronymics, son of, or, new word, paponymics, grandson of. Now, Irish surnames have also descriptive names and occupation names. An example of a descriptive name would be the family, and fines were warrants addressed to the Irish Chancery directing the issue of letters patent under the Great Seal. So we're dealing here with administrative documents. These are open letters called fiants because of the first words, fiant litteres patentes, let open letters be issued to. And this is followed generally by a list of names. Now, the importance of these fiants is that they record about 120,000 names of individuals in Ireland of the 16th century. That's between Henry VIII and Elizabeth I, 1517 to 1603. That's all the Tudors. It's really a who's who of 16th century Ireland. If your name occurs there, then you're up there. 120,000 out of a population of 1.5 million. The originals of these fiants were, I'm afraid, burnt in the attack on the Four Courts on June the 29th, 1922, and described in great detail and with a certain amount of self-satisfaction by Ernie O'Malley in his book, The Singing Flame. The first person mentioned, as you can see here, is Myler MacFeerick of Ethergool, Horseman. That's it. Very short. It's a list of people. Now, sharp observers will notice the first word is Gurt Inchigori. And most Irish people would recognise that as the town of Gort. And Gort in Irish is Gurt Inchigori. And so some place names are recognisable today, others which have been anglicised are not. Now, the context, of course, is the issuing of pardon for presumably anti-government activities. The place mentioned is Ethergowl there. It's easy to recognise. It's a parish and a town in North County Galway, within the boundaries of the barony of Dunmore. It's still there today, Ethergowl. There are still Feerick families living in the parish of Ethergowl today. The year mentioned is down at the bottom. It's the 32nd year. That is the regnal year. Years for kings, including our queens, including the present queen, are calculated by the day and the month when she became queen. That's the first regnal year. Elizabeth I became queen in November of 1558, so the first regnal year is between 1558 and 1559. And making calculations, you can work out that that's 1590. Now, horseman, in Tudor times, meant a better off farmer who might himself be the tenant of a large farmer. The fact that he had a horse placed him above the serfs. Again, in the feudal organisation of things, the serfs are tillers of the soil. The second person mentioned is, always in the context of issuing of pardons, is Walter Kitta Mac Feerick, then common, of Saying. See there. Now, Walter's name occurs in a list of people from the townland or parish of Down Valley. It's just in the line above, Down Valley of Saying. Down Valley probably is the parish of, is a townland, is still today, a townland in the parish of Dunmore, or it could refer to another townland we don't know, but we have one to which it refers, probably there. He's called Kitta in the middle between his name and surname. That's kind of a nickname. And the nickname, I had to consult an expert on medieval Irish to work out what this meant, because I wasn't convinced that it means what you think it means. Today it means left-handed, but in the 16th and 17th century, ceathach didn't mean that at all. It meant awkward, clumsy, troublesome, and difficult. The date was 1559. We had an uncle in Manchester, one of my uncles, who was called Cranky. And that seems to, that trait continued on in our family at least. Now, the third person mentioned has a much longer entry. It's lands of Athergold Beg, the Rath and Shrobeg in the barony of Dunmore, in the said county, parcels of land of Piers Mac Feerick of Athergold Beg, attainted. Now, the date of this find is 1596. I didn't include the regnal year there, but it's at the bottom of every find. It's in the middle of the 9 Years' War. For those who know, remember the history of the war between the great chieftains of the north, O'Neill and O'Donnell, and the forces of the crown. It was the final showdown between the forces of the crown and the great Irish chieftains. In fact, the outcome of this was the end of the traditional Gaelic way of life. And the flight of the Earls, which resulted from this, led to the flight of many, many people from this island to seek a better life abroad. Now, the first thing we learn about Piers, of course, is that he has either lands in 3 townlands or has the freehold of the same townlands, all of which lie within the parish of Dunmore. Although he's not described as a gentleman, a horseman, or a knight, he's clearly a man of substance. His place of residence is given as Athergold Beg. Legal system. An attainted person was effectively outside the law, deprived of all civil rights, disabled from seeking redress in the courts, and obliged to forfeit his estate. Attainder was, therefore, a formal declaration by Parliament and without trial that a person was a traitor to the Crown. The subject of such a bill of attainder was deemed to have incurred corruption of the blood and consequently lost the right to transmit property, because property was transmitted through the bloodline. If the blood was attainted or corrupted, you lost the right to transmit property. Now, we have to admire the Elizabethan lawyers and their clever way of doing things. Interestingly, there were no Feerick families in the parish of Dunmore 260 years later. 0. Now, looking backwards from our position of 1590, looking backwards to the centuries that went before, there is no mention of any surname resembling Feerick in the great book of Irish genealogies or in any of the other annals or books preserved from earlier times. No Feerick ever appears among the principal Gaelic or Anglo-Norman families. Now, I have that, I again wanted confirmation of this, so I consulted Dr. Nuala Gomudilla, the great professor of medieval Irish in University of Galway. And looking forward from 1590s, there is no one called Feerick mentioned in the major 17th century surveys like the Strafford Inquisition, 1625 to 1635, based in Ballinrobe, the transplantation to Connaught after the Cromwellian conquest of the country, 1654 to 1658, or the Book of Survey and Distribution from the 1680s onwards. They simply do not appear among the landholders of the time. Now, they were probably there, as we know from other sources. They were probably there, but their holdings were too small to be of interest to the officials conducting the surveys. An example of this would be, imagine you have an apartment in an apartment block. Now, the apartment block can change ownership without affecting you. You won't be even counted. So the apartment block, which was Ireland, changed ownership frequently. It changed ownership at the very top. The people halfway down didn't notice that. As long as they paid their rent, nobody noticed. Now, the next only parish for which we have documentation at this particular time, 1783. This is very important for people who come from the parish of Ballinrobe. It's the earliest time Ballinrobe gets a mention. Athergool Beg and Dunmore are mentioned in the 1590s. This is a considerable amount of time later. The author of this register of households was a priest called Father Francis Xavier Blake. And he was in Ballinrobe, he was parish priest of Ballinrobe at the time. It was discovered in the 1940s. Nobody knew about it before then. Among the documents of the Wardenship of Galway. Now, this won't be familiar to anybody here. The Wardenship of Galway was a quasi-diocese based in the Collegiate Church of St. Nicholas in Galway. And until that church and diocese were, our Wardenship were subsumed into the Diocese of Galway in 1831. Now, 11 Feerick families are mentioned here. Now, they are not landholders. They are not anything like that. This is a list of people who paid or were due to pay the Easter and Christmas dues for the parish. Now, if you look at it, there are two clusters of families here. One in the townland of Knocknakill, with 5 families, and Rare Edmond, or Rap Edmond, with 3 families. Now, we can see that there are, strangely, no Feerick families recorded as living in any street or town in Ballinrobe, in the town of Ballinrobe in the early 1780s. It would appear that all the Feerick families living in the parish of Ballinrobe were small farmers, leasing land from the local landlords. No movement here, we can see no movement here towards a town or occupations typical of town dwellers. The period of the 1820s and 1830s is the period of another tax list. Now, this tax list is called the Tithe Allotment Books. And the tithes were a tax, a church tax, imposed by the established church, that is the Church of Ireland, on all holders of landed property of more than 1 acre. Town dwellers, landless farm labourers and holders of poor quality land were exempt. Now, according to the Tithe Allotment Books, there were just 4 Feerick families paying tithes in the parish of Ballinrobe in 1827. In 1783, 40 years before, there were 11 families, and in the 1850s, with Griffith's valuation, there were 23 families. Coming to Galway, only 1 family is is mentioned as paying tithes in Galway, and that is Walter Feerick of Glenamaddy. 20 years later in Galway, there were 20 families. So the Tithe Proclamation books are, they greatly underrepresent the number of families living in either Galway or Mayo. The number of Feerick families, of course, living in Galway, about 30% of the people are mentioned. Now, this is, we're coming on now to Griffith's valuation. Is the name commonly given to a nationwide property tax survey, not a new idea at all, carried out in the mid-19th century under the direction of Sir Richard Griffith. Now, this survey consisted in a detailed valuation of every piece of land, taxable agricultural land or built property on the island of Ireland, and I mean every piece. Nothing was excluded. It was published on a county-by-county basis between 1847 and 1864. The volume for County Galway was published in 1855 and reflects the occupation of land in the decade after the Great Famine. Now, this is simply just to give you an idea, because this is the Roman Catholic parishes. The next slide has the actual parishes which are done in Griffith's valuation, that is the civil parishes. And the civil parish lists are on one side there. The highest concentration of Feerick families is in the civil parish of Athergould. That's parish number 3. You can see it up here. It's in 2 parts. And the other Feericks are found in the parish right beside, the parish of Liskeavy, and then in the parish of Kilconda. These are, Liskeavy is 103, you can see it there, and Kilconda is just below it at number 56. The Feericks were also represented in the parishes of Tuam, basically in the 1 or 2 in the parish of Tuam, and in Rahoon, which is just outside Galway. I think it's over there. So there have been Feerick families scattered a little bit around Galway, but mainly concentrated in the civil parish of Athergould. In that parish, that is Athergould, one townland stands out, and that's the townland of Dalgan. Now, townland is the name that people use. In Mayo, we usually refer to them as villages, which is a much easier way to think about these places. We call the village our townland. It had 3 Feerick families in 1855. James, Robert and Michael Feerick were small tenant farmers renting lands from Michael Birmingham. Now, this Michael Birmingham is quite an interesting chap. He and his brother Edward were the only heirs of the last Baron of Athenry, which is Major John Birmingham, who died in 1799. And his estate was divided into 2 parts. He was given, or his ancestor was given land in and around Tuam. Now, after the Major's death, the Dalgan estate, that is the estate around Dalgan, went to Michael Birmingham, and the Millbrook estate went to Edward. Now, the Millbrook estate is around about the town of Milltown in Galway. Michael held 6 townlands in the parish of Athergould in 1863. A few years after Griffith's valuation was published, he sold the Dalgan estate to Dennis J. Kerwin. Edward's son John, who inherited the Millbrook estate, was possibly the most famous Galway person in his own lifetime. He was an amateur astronomer and discovered a crater on the moon, and made a special study of red stars, all from his home in and around Milltown. He had a fine house there in the townland of Lack. Those who know Milltown, town of Lack, and he had a milling complex, and they're all close to the town of Milltown in Galway. Unfortunately, he didn't have any descendants. He lived as a single man. Now, it is a matter of great surprise that there was no Feerick family resident in the civil parish of Dunmore in Griffith's valuation. They have been there before, but there was none there right now. The largest farmer was a man called Michael Feerick in the townland of Pollathurich in the parish of Athergool. And he had 28 acres of land. He was the largest Feerick farmer in County Galway at the time. Now, the most unusual Feerick holding was in the townland of Cooladuan in the parish of Athergool, always, where James Feerick had a small garden described in Griffith's valuation as free. Now, free means in Griffith's valuation that the occupier, that is James Feerick, they didn't know who he was supposed to pay the rent to, so he paid no rent. It was free, and today we call him a squatter. It's the 8th most common surname it was at the time of Griffith's valuation, the 8th most common surname in the parish of Athergool. Now, we're coming to Mayo again. This is just these are the maps of the Roman Catholic parishes. They just have the names and that you can easily recognize more or less. When we look at the distribution of the Feerick families in Mayo, and then I go on to the next map because it's clearer from the next map, a kind of pattern seems to emerge. Most families are clustered in the parishes around Ballinrobe. And there are 3 outlying parishes. Now, the outlying parishes are here, here, and here. Ballinrobe, keep your eye on that, it's number 11. So the 3 outlying parishes, the first one is Allgower, quite near where we are today, Westport. And Thomas Feerick had a dwelling house and some land in one townland and a forge in the other. He was probably a small farmer come blacksmith, a highly respected trade at the time. The parish of Killaden, that is number 45, had 3 Feerick families at the time of Griffith's valuation in the mid-1850s. Here, my own ancestor, Patsy, had a small farm, and together with his brother Jimmy, managed a small cottage mill. Near the modern town of Ballyhaunis, that's the parish of Anna, it's just over here, number 6. There were 2 Feerick families, Richard and Michael. They lived in the townland of Carrick-McIntyre. They were small tenant farmers, renting land from the Birminghams of Millbrook. They had 6 townlands in Mayo. They were renting land for one of John Birmingham's maiden aunts. There were 3 people living in the house in Millbrook. There were 2 maiden aunts and a gentleman, brother of theirs. So none of them ever got married. Now, looking at the parish of Ballinrobe, that's number 11. There are 3 parishes more or less north of Ballinrobe and 3 more or less south. The 3 parishes to the north are Robeen, Tageen, and slightly to the east, Kilcommon. You'll see the numbers are there on the side. There were Feerick families in 4 townlands in the parish of Robeen. That's Brownstown, Clondaver, Coolylochan, and Kilthrone. In fact, Feerick is one of the most common surnames in this parish at the time of Griffith's valuation. And many families today can trace their ancestors to this parish. Tageen parish had 1 Feerick family in the 1850s, but Kilcommon, also called Kilmaine, had a Feerick family in the townlands of Cloneen, French Grove and Chantallow. Now, we know the Feericks of French Grove emigrated to California and are very prolific in Northern California. I spoke to them last night and explained that French Grove, the townland of French Grove, is recorded in the Irish annals in 1306, but in different parts of the world as well. And long may the family continue to grow and prosper. Thank you very much.
I met two gentlemen. I said, my name is John Feerick from New York. And the first gentleman said, my name is John Feerick, right here in Balmoral area. And then another gentleman I introduced myself to said, my name is John Feerick from Manchester, England. So I have to give you some explanation as I go. I thought a useful way for me to begin is to let you know, and I'll back up a little bit, that I'm the first born of my parents in the United States. I was born in the year 1936. When I grew up, I only knew one Feerick outside our immediate family, and I'll make reference to that person. About maybe 25 years ago, to collect information on the Feericks, and I didn't even ask my father to give me a history at that point because I thought he would live forever, and he didn't. But what I remember in the conversation was, he said, whenever you get around to writing about the Feericks, and you go to Ireland to learn about the different Feericks, he said, there's a way to distinguish those you're tied to and those you're not tied to. And I said, what's that, Pop? And he said, any of the Feericks who describe themselves as wealthy, forget it. They're not in your they're not in your line. And I tucked that away. And about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I got more into it. I said, I'm going to write a book about my parents, about my ancestry, about certain good fortune I had at different points in my own life. And I hesitated moving forward, but my brother Donald said, you got to do it. You're the oldest, you got to do it, and I'll help you. Neither of us understood that he would die shortly after that conversation of esophagus cancer. And his widow, Meg, is here today, and as is my brother Kevin, and my daughter Rosemary, and two of my grandchildren. As I was beginning to get into my story, if I could put it that way, my sister Maureen, who lives in North Carolina, said, let me help you. She said, did you know that in the 1930 census in the United States, it shows that your name, she's speaking to me, her brother John, actually she calls me David, so don't get confused on that. Your name, John Feerick, with two E's, appears 13 times in the 1930 United States census. 9 John Feericks were then living in New York. It didn't include my father, who had just arrived. 2 lived in South Dakota, and 2 in Missouri in 1930. She also said 2 sisters, Ellen and Margaret, whose children are here with some with their husbands, and they had he had 4 brothers. 2 went to England. 1 died, it appears, at 2 years of age, and 1 stayed on the family farm and never married. That's Martin in Balmoral. And so my father came to America in 1929, just before the stock market crashed, and he met my mother in the early 1930s. They married, and they had 5 children. And as I mentioned, I'm the oldest of the 5. They spent most of their adult lives, as so many other Irish did, in the Bronx, one of the 5 counties of New York City. And in the latter few years of their life, since they always had a dream of having their house in America, their children pooled all our assets, and we built that house for them in Lake Carmel, New York, as their health declined. The 5 children that they gave birth to, in turn, had 19 children of their own. And the 19 children of their own, in turn, have 36 children. So from those 2 people in America sprung in the different generations, doubled and tripled the number that started. The John Feerick, I call him Pop, was born on the Kilmaine Road, and his father was David Feerick. I claim to be named after his father, my grandfather. He was a farmer. Did some road work at different points to make a little more money because he was very poor for his family. And he married Ellen McDermott, a homemaker. And there's some evidence that she spent as a younger person some time in Philadelphia. So she had some understanding of America, which I have to believe supported my father's decision to come to America in 1929. And he was never to see his parents again. He had no money to go back. He never saw his parents again. And he never saw his sister Ellen, whose daughter Marie from England is here again, and broke his heart when he learned in the 1950s that his sister died. His father was another farmer, John Feerick, who died in 1905. So I claim to be named after him too. So John David picks up my grandfather and my great-grandfather. And thanks to Aidan, and I consider the world's greatest authority, not simply on Feericks, but anything that has to do with genealogy, but certainly on Feericks. I've learned a lot more about my family. The story of John Feerick, now my father, in America is quite different from what it likely would have been for him had he remained in Ireland. Worked on his family farm, married and raised children in Ireland. Neither of my parents had a high school education, but they made education in our home central in the lives of their families, their children, their 5 children. They gave us our faith, they pounded into us, and it became a very important part of our identity. My father, Pop's work life in America varied. He was a sandhog, working in the water tunnels deep down under the ground, which he was very unsafe, but you could make a few more dollars. And even many immigrants during the Depression did not want to be sandhogs because of what was involved in sandhog activities. He worked on the waterfront. He worked on milk trucks for Sheffield's farm. And then during the war, he went away for 4 or 5 years working with military contractors in Alaska, Aleutian Islands, Greenland, and there were submarines all over Greenland, sunk a number of American ships, including the Dorchester, with those 5 faith ministers who went down, gave their life vest, and they went down with the ship. So we didn't see much of my father during the war years. When he came back, he worked as an operator of trolleys, because he learned how to drive big vehicles on these construction sites he was working on. And then when trolleys sort of ceased to exist in New York City, he operated buses. Along the way, he, like my mother, became naturalized citizens. He much earlier. That's my father holding me when I'm just a few years old. He's the only one to come to the United States from his family. His 2 brothers went to England, and his 2 sisters stayed in Ireland, and his brother Martin stayed here, and his brother James died at maybe 2 years of age. Okay, and then after that. Okay, that's Tom Feerick, who was served. He was a great relief pitcher before the war for Cleveland and the Philadelphia Athletics, and then he had wartime service, and he also played on a baseball team during the war. You know, sort of those in the armed forces, and he was a great leader then. Bob Feerick, I came to learn about. Bob Feerick, graduate of Santa Clara University in California, has a different history. His father was very much involved in building, and I know that from a Facebook presentation by a grandchild. I'm not on Facebook, one of my kids is, and somebody sent me the Facebook description of his parents. And I mentioned the Feerick family. If I said Patrick, it should have been John. I tell you, I get confused with all the Johns and Pat. Now there's a family of Feericks who I've learned about because of Michael's request to be part of this program in Pennsylvania. Some are spread out, and there were two brothers. There was a brother, the Pennsylvania Feericks, the two brothers who come, and they have children, and the other brother has a child, or in that family line, Nancy Feerick. And she also celebrated 50 years, and she's done a lot of teaching to immigrants in West Philadelphia about the Feericks in America. It's wonderful people who really were out front in different sports. And we have a weatherman right now. Every time he shows up on the radio in New York, my name is John Feerick, and then he gives the weather report. He's all over the place in New York, and everyone says, "Is he your brother? Is he your son?" I said, "I've never heard of the guy." And well, I spoke to him in preparing for this program, and he's 31 years of age, and I learned that his father, John, was part of the two brothers who came to America in the Pennsylvania group. And so the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, I knew I was missing one. And this week became an important week for me. I was very active in the American Bar Association. I was a lawyer for the first 21 years of my life with a small firm of 10 lawyers that became, according to a lot of publications out there, the most successful firm financially in America, because of its market share of handling corporate takeovers. So that's, it gave me a sense of the importance of integrity, the importance of service, and all the Feericks that I have discovered all fall in the same category. Now, maybe a good way to end it is to mention Martin Feerick. Martin Feerick was born in New York City. His father was, I believe, born in Ireland. His daughter is here. She'll correct me and maybe supplement anything I say. His father, he was an outstanding student. He went to Regis High School. That's the best.
Well, good morning, everybody. Very excited to be here. This is my 4th trip to Ireland, and I absolutely love coming. So who am I? I'm Maureen. I'm the eldest daughter of 4 daughters of Nola, who was born Feericks. And Nola was the 3rd generation in Australia to be born from the Ballinrobe Austin, who came out in 1859. My mother is still alive. She's 90. She would love to be here. And I have to pay tribute to my mother, who has gathered a lot of the information on the Feericks family, as well as a lady called Greta Brady in Rockhampton, Sue, who's done some, Sue's here today, from Bribie, and another lady called Nari, who between them have put the story of the Feericks family together in Australia. What happened when they came out to Australia was officially changed by deed poll to Feerick. Tried at Castle Bar in Mayo in 1879. Feericks, who was born in Ballinrobe around 1830, we think. He was the son of David and Ellen. Now, unfortunately, Australian library, and she was born, I think, in Ballinrobe. Ellen was. Peter in the Sisters of Mercy at All Hallows in Brisbane. Miles Aloysius Feericks. He was described as one of the two conscription when he was a senator. It's believed he did that as a left-handed guitarist. His name was really Alan David. Austin Francis Feerick. He was from 17. Tom was blown up at Passchendaele. He has no knowledge. And she's only up against it. 'Twas then he excelled in his play. So in Rockhampton, named after Haywood Feerick. That's one of grandchildren and great-grandchildren couldn't be present. And that was
the first reference we've is the wedding of our great-grandfather, Mike, to an Elizabeth Hall at Mellor, which is just outside Stockport on the Derbyshire-Cheshire border. And all it says is he came from Ireland. And his father's name was John, and he also came from Ireland. Surprise, surprise. But we keep trying, and hopefully somebody, someday, will be able to fit in the next bit, and we'll get back a bit farther. Michael had 6 children, of whom 2 survived. Our grandfather Joseph, and his sister Maria. And Maria died at 15, and Joseph had just Joseph, our grandfather, was killed in the First World War, and he left 5 children, and my grandmother, and she had to fight to get a pension. He was a sergeant. He was thrown and his horse was spooked. Wasn't even in battle, and he had a head injury and died. And he's buried in Nevian in France. And our grandmother had to fight for her pension, and she got 23 shillings a week to keep her and 5 children, which not very much. Little brother was the first Feerick at Harvard, followed by Mike. So, and then this year. So we're keeping the name going firm and strong. Okay, Mike, will that
I'm here representing the Brownstown Feericks, and I am joined this weekend by my brothers, JJ and Martin, my sister Breed, our children and my nieces. I am also joined and delighted to be joined by Abby Feerick from Fermoy. Abby is the wife of my uncle who died recently at the ripe old age of 98. Abby is here with her entourage. They come in huge numbers and they insist on keeping us up until morning. And they bring their musical instruments. I'm also joined by our relatives from our cousins from Multifarnham, Kathleen, Andrew, Martin, Michael, and their wives and husband, Jimmy. I'm delighted also to be joined by Seamus and Maureen, our cousins from Ballinsloe, their spouses and children. Also by Catherine O'Connor from Mitchelstown, who's the daughter of my Auntie Kitty, who died at the ripe old age of 99 recently. And very happy to be joined by Maureen O'Connor. Maureen is the widow of our cousin Michael, who would absolutely love to be here with us tonight, and thank you, Maureen, so much for being with us. We are the Brownstown Feericks. There were 3 families of Feericks in Brownstown, and we are the Doonbeg Feericks. and we're from the shores of Lough Carra. Unfortunately, we haven't contacted or managed to contact any of our relatives from we know they emigrated to Australia and to the United States, but we haven't actually made any contact with them. The only thing I can promise you here is that we intend to be here when the capsule is raised in 2063. Because, believe it or not, our family, my uncles and aunties, managed to get into the Guinness Book of Records in 2010, or was it 2000, Abby? For having seven siblings still living between the ages of 80 and 90. So that's our claim to fame, and thank you much for being here for your attention.
That's the first word, the first sentence I learned in Germany. The first Irish sentence. I'm a part of the Kilchmach Feerick. My father, Louis Feerick, can you please stand up? Stand up, please. Come on. And all my uncles are here. Aiden's the oldest, and then there are, I don't know, I think Anita is the second, Hans, Kieran, Philip, Kevin, Veronica. I always forget all the names. There are too many. And I love to see my cousins again, and my great-grand-cousins out there. I'm looking forward to meet you all. I'm looking forward, really do.
Thank you, Fiona. Okay. So, Rosemary, on behalf of the New York Feericks.
Hi everyone, so I'm Rosemary once again, and I'm here with this table over here with my father, John D., as he's been referred to this evening, as well as my Uncle Kevin, and some of their, and my Aunt Meg, who is was married to my Uncle Donald, also Feerick. And also some of their first cousins from here in Ireland, from Foxford, Kevin and Mary and Breege and Eileen. And then of our next generation after me, Roddy and Dylan. So we have sort of several different dimensions of our family present here today. I think that the piece that I just wanted to add, you heard a lot about our family in the presentation if you were here this morning, so I don't need to say anything more about that.
From one coast in America to the other, so we're going to have some people from San Diego, from California. All right, check some. This is the Virginia Feerick, right?
Thank you. I'm Chuck Feerick from San Diego. Here with my family from New York, Virginia, DC, and my cousin Colin from New York. We're really happy to be here. One thing we've noticed is that a lot of hard work has gone into this, so first off I'd like to thank Emer for all the work she's done. Yeah, this has been a lot of hard work, and Colin and I as a younger generation have realized all the work that's gone into this, and the ancestors before us who've had to do all the work to make this happen, so it's pretty amazing to be a part of it and bring everybody back together to do this. So thank you.
So I'll start by saying anyone that doesn't know who the New York Yankees are, they are the most professional, the most dominant professional franchise in the U.S., and Feerick is part of that, so can we give it up for that? And second of all, I want to follow up with what Chuck said. I've been sitting here for the last 2 hours listening to John speak about his father and the sacrifices he made in the war. And I've heard various others speak about, the work that your parents have done and the parents before them. And I think it's probably easy for you all to say, well, when I'm gone, who's going to do it? We will. We'll make a commitment to you as the young folks to keep this going. especially coming from America, where I think you tend to hang on your primary family, which is your mother and your father, and maybe your grandparents. It's incredible to see a room full of people dedicated to following up their lineage, you know, nailing down their roots and following up with that. So cheers to you all. Thank you for everything. And,
Well, ladies and gentlemen, all I can say is that this weekend we have really appreciated the camaraderie, the friendship that the Feerick's family, or Feerick family, have offered us in coming to Westport or to Ballon Road for this reunion. We have come a long way. We enjoy coming a long way to see you all. And we consider that we've made some wonderful friendships with the Feerick family. Mike says that I'm like a magnet, I attract them. Because I found Aidan in Dublin and I found Stephen in Mallow on my way to the reunion, which was really amazing. So thank you for making us so welcome. We really enjoyed it today.
Team is fine.
Bring in multiples.
Good evening. We hail from French Grove. We hail from French Grove. And the most significant part of this weekend was after we left the tour in Ballon Road today. Mike took us and drove us to French Grove, where we got to see where we hail from. We have 3 generations here this weekend. We can trace our ancestry as far back as John Feerick and his wife Bridget in 1841. They had 10 kids, which ended up in New York, San Francisco, and Ireland. And his son Brian Sr. developed most of, or a good part of, San Francisco. And his granddaughter, Debbie, is here today, and she would like to share with you what we did in French Grove today.
Hi, I'm Debbie Feerick, and I'm from Petaluma, California. And I'm out here with 2 of my aunts from the 5 siblings of my great-great-grandfather. And we just lost their brother, my father, 2 years ago, and he would have been delighted to be here. He came here probably about 7 years ago, but to have had this opportunity to see where his family came from and to have shared this moment with you, I just know he's here with us. We actually brought some of his ashes, and it was so wonderful of Mike to escort us to our family homestead, where we were able to scatter some of those. And we are part of the Bobby Feerick from the Golden State Warriors, and he is a relative of ours, and we shared many seasons going to the Warriors games. And I just want to thank you, Mike, for putting this all together for all of us, and thank you.
Just checking the soccer scores, I mean. Thank you, Michael. I think Mary has covered a lot from our side of the family. My name is Stephen Feerick, the youngest son of Martin from Brownstown outside Ballinrobe. My dad, Martin, was one of a family of 10. His mother, Margaret, would have passed away with the birth of the last child, Tommy, and they were reared probably in very difficult times on the shores of Lough Corrigh in the early 1900s. Mary also spoke there earlier about all the different strains of family we have here, so I don't need to go into that. I suppose all I want to say really is that we're having a fantastic weekend. We'd like to culminate that with a Mayo victory just before you get too excited, don't forget there's a small matter of a hurling final next Saturday night, okay? And maybe Rosemary there might say a wee prayer. So the Rebels will come back with the McCarthy Cup next Saturday night as well. Thank you very much. So I hope you enjoy the rest of the night. Thank you.
And don't be talking about the Waterford victory over Galway.
Waterford and Mayo have parallel histories. They listened for a couple of matches, and I won't go into that. I'm struggling to find any heroics in our Feerick family. We have beautiful people. I cannot think that we have heroic deeds.
How dare you?
But then I don't know everything about them. But I will say that my parents were the most cultured people that we had the best fun with. And they introduced us to music and literature. I learned about Gafafi when you're sailing to Ithaca. The journey is what matters, not the destination. And that applies to everybody here, to our immigrants that we have so much time for. The yearning perhaps for Ireland, but it's when you arrive, even if you're disappointed in Ithaca, you have learned so much from your journey. And they were educated people, they were wishy people. I think they honoured the area that they lived in. They were kind to people, they were kind to poor people. I was reared in the 40s in Ireland. It was a poor time, it was a war time, there was rationing, and I think they were very kind to poor people, of whom there were many. You must remember that this was a time that there wasn't any assistance, there wasn't any dole, and I don't think anybody was ever chased for their debts, for their tuppenny halfpenny debts, I must say. So it's so wonderful to be here. I hope we make it an annual event, and congratulations to Mike and to Aidan. We still don't know where we came from, not that. Do we know who we are? Perhaps. So, best of luck to everyone.
What's his other name?
Just to say, it's a very exciting evening for everybody, for all of us. We're meeting real good friends. We're making, I hope, really good friends, and hopefully we'll all meet again sometime. I just want to pay tribute to everybody who came from long journeys. I'm speaking on behalf of the local Feericks, like Tom. My father and mother rears their 8 children in Abbey Street, Ballinrobe, small struggling shopkeepers. But we made a lot of friends, and thanks to the people that came before us, we still have, and today, a lot of friends, and I want to welcome everybody that ever we knew that's here. But the other thing I want to say is this is a Feerick gathering, you know, above all. And I want to pay a tribute to the spouses, to the women that they married, and to the men that the women married, especially. And I just want to pay tribute to them because that's part of the fabric, isn't it? Very much so. Listen, it's great to meet everybody. I'm really thrilled to be here, and we have some such famous people that we all know who they are, and it's great to welcome everybody and anybody. And I want to thank the organising committee of Michael and Aidan and Emer and co. Did a great job, and it's not easy. There's a lot of bits and pieces to be put together, and I hope we'll all meet again soon. And God bless you.
We're all North Galway, right?
We're the whole Feerick.
Yeah, I suppose, just to introduce myself, I'm PJ Feerick, I live in Milltown. In the presentation that you saw earlier and that Aidan gave and Mike repeated a few minutes ago, you saw a reference to a Feerick in Adagul. in the parish of Athergold, there was a village by the name of Feerick, and that's the village that my grandfather came from. In 1898, he moved from the village to the next village, which is Inverclyde, excuse me, where I now live. But it was a cute move for him, because not only did he get a wife, but he also got a farm and a house. And they had 8 children, 4 of which immigrated to America. There was 3 uncles of mine and an aunt. One uncle lived in Massachusetts, and my other 2 uncles and aunt excuse me, lived in the Bronx. And I was listening over the last day or so about all the Feericks in that particular area, and surprised, I think, when John said that he didn't know any Feericks in New York. All of my uncles and aunts got married, had reasonably large families, and in a family tree that was carried out by Roseanne Feerick, who was married to a cousin of mine in 2007, discovered that there are currently 128 direct descendants from my grandfather still living in America. And it's unfortunate that she died a number of years ago, otherwise she'd be the one that would be here leading this side of the branch of the Feericks. And it was a tribute to her. She produced a very detailed family tree. But just to go back to the ones that remained at home, including my father, there was 4 others that remained in the land. My father, he was the local postman for a number of years, quite a few years, as I grew up. But I don't know, just for the younger people that are here, there was a few things that they might know about what went on back in those years. I don't know if you ever heard of an Irish wake. If you have a wake, you need somebody that has died, but an Irish referred to an Irish wake where, in fact, somebody was leaving, and they were leaving, and the family knew they would never ever see them again, or it was very, very unlikely that they would. And because of that, they called it an Irish wake, and I suppose my grandparents had 4 of those.
Hello, I'm really not a Feerick either. I've just joined the clan, and I'm definitely delighted to be part of the Feericks. My husband David is Feerick from Clonborough, which is County Galway, and a lot of his family would have immigrated in the 1880s, and they settled mostly in New Jersey. But I did find a great-granduncle of his that went to Wisconsin, and he died there. He was 35 years of age. In 1870. But yeah, the Feericks of Clonborough, they've all been very successful in their own right too, and his first cousin in London, he's got the Freedom of the City of London for his work with charity work with the police forces and that. So I'm delighted to be here for the weekend, and it was absolutely super. Great work went into it, and I'm sure behind the scenes an awful lot more than we'll ever realise. And thank you very much everyone for a lovely weekend.
I'm Alison Muldenky, and my grandfather was Patrick Joseph Feerick. He grew up in Knocknakilu. He was the son of Martin Feerick and Mary Concannon. He followed his brother James to New York in the early 20th century and married a woman from Swinford. We met in New York, and they seemed sort of close here, but had to go across the ocean to meet. They had 5 children, of whom 3 lived to adulthood. One was my father, Martin, of whom you've heard. His 2 sisters, one never married. The other married a man named Riley, and I've seen that name tonight. My father Martin had 2 children. My brother had 3 and I had 1. And so my grandfather has now ended up with 6 great-grandchildren from that. And it has been a great pleasure for me to come here. I came 2 years ago. I had the wonderful experience of meeting my grandfather's nephew, which I absolutely never expected. His wonderful wife, their 2 sons. I reconnected with those 2 sons here, met yet another cousin, and their cousin, and my cousin now. That was a marvelous thrill for me. And I hope to meet yet a 4th by the time I finish this trip, traveling over to Ballinasloe. And I do want to thank all of the organizers. I know this is a tremendous undertaking, and by all accounts, I think a tremendously successful one, giving us all a great experience.
Our family's history, and what we're going to try and do over the next couple of years is, it's very clear that actually there aren't too many Feericks, and that they probably all connect back into the 1500s, and let's try and just put one big giant family tree together by the next time that we meet. And there's a number of people that are willing and have volunteered to do DNA testing, along with the just doing the other research. So if you feel that you're up for that, hopefully we'll get every strand of the Feerick family in on that. So I just want to start with some thank yous, because we want to move on. I want to start by thanking the committee, and that is Aidan here beside us, Kevin Feerick from Kilchimagh, Adele and Erica, who were terrifically helpful to Emer, to John Feerick, sitting over here with the flag champion, has been terrific. But I'm sure the other committee members won't have an issue with me saying a tremendous special thanks to Emer. Emer has been amazing. She organised everything on the ground here in Mayo, and as I don't live here, that was particularly useful. I just want to confess to you, Emer, that I wasn't going to do this unless we had a team, but I did meet your brother for breakfast about maybe a year ago, and she says, "Oh, we'll get Emer on it, she'll do a power walk for you." So you nodded agreement, so he's obviously done that damage before. But thank you, Emer, you've been an extraordinary help on this. I want to thank our presenters. To John from New York, thank you very, very much. Wonderful presentation, and what a tremendous success that we can all be proud of. To Maureen from Australia, what a lovely story. And just a particular thank you to Maureen, because Maureen has soldiered on her own down there, and there's others, Greta Brady and people like that, but definitely keeping the flame alive for the Feericks, and has constantly, every year, I get the update on the family, and it's just really, really nice to see that pride, so thank you. To Aidan, I guess there's not many family reunions where we have an actual full-time genealogist working at the National Library, and that's with Aidan here, and I think that you all know that his presentation this morning was just something absolutely exceptional, and tremendously scholarly, and thank you very much. There's a special woman that I just met tonight, and I just want to thank her, and that's Anne Feerick from Kerry. Now, she did something different, so we have this idea of putting together a family reunion, and alright, we can do an awful lot on the web, but at the end of the day, somebody has to call people, right? So Anne took to Skype, right? And I talked to her one week, and she says, "Oh, I'm on Texas this week, right? I'm on, Idaho the next week, right?" And she was down there in Kerry, and every week she took on a state, and she has rang a power of people just using the white pages, out of the blue, no shame in her at all. She'd ring up anybody. But it's terrific. And there's a few people here today because of her. Thank her. I want to thank the musicians last night. Last night, Michael Pearce was a first cousin of my own. His mother's an Eileen Feerick from Roxborough. And he organised his friends from the Kyotos to come along, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to thank them last night, but I thank them publicly now, and I will thank them in private later. But they were terrific, I think you'll agree. It was great to have the Minister along. It's nice to have the Minister of Tourism. He doesn't come to every family gathering in Ireland, I can assure you. And the Mayor, that was a nice touch. I want to thank just the originators of the idea. Yeah, I said that already, I guess, but with John, I had many conversations with John in New York. We had a conversation maybe about 6 months ago, and we said we just got to do this. And then with John's offering of Emer's help, and with Maureen, we just decided to go ahead and do it. So thank you for that.